This podcast contains strong language and adult themes.
Date Night China explores life and love for better relationships in China. Every week, we hear from different guests and dive into dating, relationships, mental health, and how both expats and Chinese people connect with each other here in China.
Join the Date Night community through our podcast and events in Beijing and Shanghai, and catch up on all the latest stories on our official WeChat account.
Find our account on WeChat by searching Date Night China, no spaces, no capital letters. You can also join our WeChat group by adding Rachel, me, on WeChat. You can search Rachel Weiss 22, RACHEL WEISS 22.
And now for this week's episode. Hello, welcome to episode 14, How to Skip Small Talk and Have Deeper Conversations with Helena from Bear. There should be a comma there, shouldn't there? It's like not just conversations with Helena from Bear, with everybody, right? It should have been with everybody.
Yes, it means with everybody, but
yeah,
this
but
conversation...
Helena from Bear is going to show us and talk to us how to do that. So, at social events and network gatherings we attend here in China, it is easy to find yourself in an endless loop of small talk, never really peeling off the surface layer and talking about things that really matter to you. Oftentimes, small talk can be awkward, just plain boring, or leave you feeling less than satisfied with your personal connections. Helena, founder of the organization Bear in Beijing, wanted to change all that.
I think that's so true, though, because in Beijing, you go through those conversations with expats, especially you're like, where are you from? How long have you been here? You know, the usual thing. And then you're like, well, that was it. So I think this is a really cool episode. I'm really excited to talk to Helena. So Helena started her personal project Bear in December 2017 to create a safe place for people to dive deeper in their connections and conversations with each other through events, workshops, interviews, social gatherings, and so much more. So Helena, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. I'm super excited. I'm excited to introduce a little bit more Bear. I'm excited to be with you guys because we're also co-organizing stuff together. And I feel really, really honored. I want to also add, I feel honored because I remember when my friend Clem added me to your group and I was like fascinated by the conversations that were taking place. I was like, oh, I want to be involved also with the ANC and I want to do stuff. And we didn't know each other at the time. And now we're doing the dinners together, and now I'm here, so I'm very, very happy. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We feel the same. We are very excited because it was the same when finding out about Bear. We were like, oh, what is this other organization? And I think the first event we found out about was Drink with Losers.
Yeah, when I heard about that, I was like, what a great idea.
It's just the title alone. You're like, what does this mean? So we're going to get into all of that and what that means. But I guess to back up our audience, if you're not in Beijing or not familiar with Bear, tell us first a little bit about yourself and then tell us about how Bear Project got started.
About myself, I've been in Beijing since 2013 and China since 2011. And I have multiple hats. I'm working for a financial consulting firm. That's my full-time job. I'm also the president of French Tech, an organization to support French technology. And I've launched this project, Bear. Bear at the time was a project that was part of the Global Shapers. And the Global Shapers is an organization of young professionals looking for positive impact, and they're related to the World Economic Forum. And then after 2 years, I left the Global Shapers, and Bear has become this project rather than even organization. It's something that I do purely for fun. And so that means that I'm completely free to do whatever I like, depending on my mood and things that really connect to me at a personal level. So Bear is very, very personal. And I did it for very, very personal reasons. So the reason why I was launching Bear was in 2016, I realized that even though I had a great job, had a great boyfriend, had a great apartment, I had great friends, I felt completely disconnected and completely crashed. Like it was nasty, you know, hair pulling, hair banging against walls, not being able to leave the bed, crying in the middle of the day as I was writing reports. And I felt really, really lonely at this time because everything was so perfect on paper. You know, everybody thought that I was cool and everything looked fine, but I didn't feel fine. And the only solution was to leave, but it took me like 8 months with coaching and going back to France, and it was bad. And what was interesting is that when I came back to China after a break of 2 months, because I was in between jobs, well, I had left a job and I was coming back without a job. I found a job quickly on, but I didn't have the side project that I was working on. I was feeling disconnected with my friends, and my boyfriend had dumped me. So I was starting from scratch. And after a few months, I was wondering, okay, now I'm ready to start a new side project again, and what should it be about? And I met a few people, and there were 2 conversations that really made a difference. There was this one guy that I had known from before, very good looking, successful entrepreneur, looked extremely confident. I kind of had a crush on him, kind of. And after we met and we had exchanged WeChat, out of the blue, he suggested that we meet up during working hours. I was working in a co-working space at the time. And so he came and we had a chat for like an hour. And I remember very vividly during this whole hour, I was like, why is he talking to me? Like, what does he want? Because he was telling me very, very personal things. He was telling me about his recently deceased mother and his mental health and how he was struggling. And I was like...
You don't expect that from somebody you don't know right away, right? You're like, whoa.
Exactly, especially because I thought it was a work-related meeting. So, like, you know, I thought he wanted to offer his translation services to our co-working space. And the conversation ended with, do you have the contact of a therapist here in Beijing? So I was like, okay, yes, I do. And I felt very... touched and honored that he would open up like this to me, but very surprised that there was such a huge gap between the image that he was projecting, right? This guy who seemed to me absolutely perfect, and the fact that he was struggling. And the second conversation was very similar. Also successful entrepreneur, good looking, financially really successful. And he told me about his 2 burnouts, depression, and his history with mental health. But this guy, I was like, so I had a conversation with that other guy. You guys know each other, right? He's like, yeah, we're close friends. Like, do you guys talk? Like, no, we don't. It's like, wait, so you guys are very similar in terms of the image that you project, similar in terms of stories, but why aren't you supporting each other? How come there's no conversations happening? And so I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to create a space where it's okay to talk to anyone really about how you feel and who you are. And you know that this is safe, that the other person is not going to judge you. And what happens when you don't talk about this image that you project, so not about work or etc., but you really talk about how you feel, then you can connect to each other. And when you can connect to each other, then you don't feel lonely anymore. Had those 2 men talked, then they wouldn't have to suffer by themselves, and they wouldn't have to talk to a complete stranger about things that are so intimate. So that is what Bear is about. It's about creating safe spaces for people to feel completely comfortable being themselves, and realizing that in doing so, that they're not so lonely in dealing with the challenges that modern or like today's society is throwing at us.
Do you feel like that deep sharing and that vulnerability and that connection is what's missing when people have these like normal interactions? They go to work, they go to these networking events, but they don't actually like hit that level of getting to the real shit, you know, when they are actually meeting people. And is that what you felt as well, that you were feeling that loneliness you were talking about?
Exactly. That's exactly that. And social media really doesn't help. But we're constantly talking or like representing the image that we are comfortable with, right? I want to be that kind of person, and I want you to see that person. And I'm playing a role, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? I'm not doing this to fool you. It's also because I am comfortable in that role. And you know, it's funny because right now, you can't see, but I just had an eye infection, which meant that I couldn't wear makeup. I had this ugly thing in my eye, and I was wearing glasses. And I was not comfortable presenting myself to the world with my bare face, because you want to look in a certain way. You're comfortable with that image that you see of yourself in the mirror, in photos. And now you're like, okay, here it is. It's my bare self. Can you still think that I'm pretty and still want to talk to me?
Yeah, it can be scary.
It is really scary. For the world, because we're afraid of judgment, but also because we're judging ourselves. Like, we don't necessarily want to see that side of ourselves. And so with creating those workshops and interviews where we're interviewing people and telling, like, please tell me who you are really, it helps people to realize, oh, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one dealing with my stuff. And if that person is open being completely themselves, then so am I. And so then you have this level of comfort and people feel close to one another and people feel good. It's good when you know that you are completely accepted for the person that you are. You don't have to pretend and you can leave the mask at the door.
I can see it being exceptionally important in a city like Beijing where you've got a huge community of foreigners far from home and anything familiar. But what you're talking about is probably, rife and just part of modern living in probably nearly every city. You know, if I went home, networking, meeting people, family, friends, I would probably still have all those problems anyway.
Yeah. And I remember moving to Beijing. I was coming from Guangzhou in a smaller city, but I remember moving here and it was really easy to find like party friends. I found like a group that I would go out with a lot. And
That's Beijing, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, but like it was fun because I was kind of just looking to, get into the city and meet new people. And that was kind of just a way to do it. And some parts of it were fun. But I think after several months of that, I hadn't found like my tribe or I hadn't found people that I was actually getting real with. I would like leave these like fun party interactions. But I was like, they don't know what my job is. They don't know how many sisters I have. Like all these like little things that are actually like really important pieces of your life. And you're like, oh, I mean, we have a great time together, but we're not actually like diving into like the real shit. If I had a mental health problem or if I was feeling low or if I needed to call somebody, it wouldn't be any of those people. But I feel like I've had so many conversations with people in Beijing who are also have felt that way before or are feeling this way now because they're not actually talking about a lot of those real things.
Well, the last 2 years, come on, not being able to like see your family or friends and COVID and job insecurity, I mean, job insecurity's happened all over the world, but Beijing, you've got that added extra little spice of the visa problem. If you leave and go home, life as you know it here, it can create a lot of anxiety. I think a lot of people are feeling that now, especially when the world seems to be getting back to normal, yet everything that we have here seems still a little like uncertain, and I think that's creating a lot of anxiety. So when you started, was it something that like you felt like, a light was switched on, you felt like, oh, this is what I need? When you first started doing it, did people get the idea straight away and they were so open to share, or was it difficult for people to let down those barriers?
There are several things that I'd like to touch on before answering that question. When you were talking about, oh, my sisters, etc. Bear is not only to talk about mental health and anxiety. It's also really about how can I be seen and perceived completely the way that I am with my sisters and with things that I'm passionate about, things that I really care about, right? I want to be seen and hold as my full self. And so sometimes people think that Bear is going to be very dark. We're going to talk about mental health and anxiety. But not only, it's also about what is something that has really given you joy? What is something that made you feel proud? What is something that is exciting for you right now? Because sometimes we are a little bit shy to talk about the great things that are happening in our lives. And we want to share something that is really important to us, but we don't really know how. And so I do see Bear also, for me, as a way to, it's very tied to my identity. You were talking about, I want to make friends that are really finding my tribe. And I think Bear for me has become some sort of an excuse to be very intentional about the types of relationships that I wanted to build. Because when people are asking me, so Helena, what do you do in Beijing? I say, yeah, I'm a consultant, but these are the side projects that I do. And I just say it's about creating safe spaces for people to be completely themselves. if the person does not respond to it, then I'm okay. It's very unlikely that you're going to be part of my tribe. But if you are someone who is interested, then it's very likely that we're going to have a lot in common. We're going to be able to connect. So now it's really become a complete part of myself where I'm like, if you are into this kind of things, then we can connect. And to answer now your question about how comfortable were people to talk, that is surprisingly or not surprisingly, I don't know. People are thirsty for this kind of connection. Everybody wants to be seen as their full self. And so, yes, as soon as you ask questions, they're like, please, I'm curious about the person that you are. I'm curious about how you feel. People are dying to actually be seen completely. So they talk very comfortably. At the same time, so these would be for participants, I would say.
Yeah, people that they know what they're signing up, or they have an idea of what they're signing up to.
Well, even not. I mean, I would remember, for instance, it was a very early on session, Drink with Losers. So Drink with Losers are those after work parties where people are given cards with questions and are encouraged to, instead of asking each other, where are you from and what do you do, they're asking very personal questions. And there are speakers who are setting the tone by comparing who they are known as and who they really are. And there was this one person, I had never seen her before. It was the first time that she came here. And she told me about the fact that she was a virgin. I'm not even sure if I knew her name at that time. And she just told me how she was feeling and how tough it was. And that I was like, that means that right now, this networking, like chill party where people are really here to have a drink, feels so safe that this person feels comfortable really opening up. So even though this is not what she had signed for, right? She had signed for to have a drink, listen to some speakers, and see where it goes. And yet she was comfortable opening up. So participants still, they okay. I had some people who came and then they thought they would be comfortable with that kind of setting, then realized, okay, I don't like it, because why would I enter such personal conversations with someone that I don't know?
I mean, it's a valid point, like people with trust and it's like, well, what do I owe you to just say, okay, this is what's going off in my head and my heart?
They want to go gradually. But what was surprising to me is that when I'm reaching out to speakers and I'm talking about people who are touching on topics of mental health, that are, guiding meditation and stuff. And I was like, well, do you want to? And it's like, nope, I am not comfortable talking about myself and how I feel. And that has been fascinating to observe that some people, they're like, okay, I'm not in that space. I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm a VC, and I can talk about being obese, going bankrupt after my divorce, and my failed companies. That I thought was wonderful. So that was one of the speakers for Drink with Losers. And I have some people who are really already connected to mental health ecosystem, and I'm like, no. I don't want to talk about my emotions. So it really depends.
That is really interesting, because it probably surprised you a bit. You're thinking, oh, yeah, this is a great opportunity to touch on that.
Yeah, but it's scary. And I think going back to the idea of judgment, it's judgment from others, but it's also very much judgment that you have about yourself. And like, am I comfortable looking at this person that I am and facing it and accepting that this is who I am? And like, not everybody is. And it completely makes sense.
Wait, so just to circle back to what you said about meeting people, and then, you present your authentic self, and if you feel like they're not going to be a part of your tribe, or they're not going to go for it, or they're going through the motions like, hi, Helena, how long you been here? What do you do? Where do you live in Beijing? Blah, blah, blah. How do you know that they are just so entrenched and so automatically trained to speak like that and not have a fulfilling... What if they don't know how to have a fulfilling conversation? How do you then determine, oh, this person just doesn't know yet, or no, this person is not my type of person?
Well, I ask them questions.
And if they don't respond,
So here, I personally believe it's very much about intentions and what you want. I'm someone who connects through words and through intimate stories. And I really, really struggle to connect to anyone when I don't have that. So it's really personal. It's for me. I'm not comfortable in small talk. And we guys have been in parties together. You might have noticed I tend to disappear very quickly because I'm freaking out. I actually don't know how to talk to people. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to joke about. I don't really drink, so there's not like this social lubricant. And so I'm like, okay, I don't know, and then I just want to leave. So I'm very intentional, and I know that several people describe me as intense, but that is what nourishes me. That's the kind of conversations that I want to have. So if I'm meeting someone, and of course they're going to go with the regular questions, and then I'm going to ask them, okay, what made you decide to come to my event? And because that's usually how I meet people. Or I'm like, who do you know here? And I would go naturally, like I'm not even thinking about it. I would go naturally into some more conversations where I feel that we're learning from each other. That's what actually at the end of the day I'm really aspiring to. I want to learn from each other, from our personal experiences, because maybe we're very different and we have very different journeys. But like there's probably something where you're gonna have an insight like, oh, I didn't think about it. Oh, I'm learning. Or I would share something similar, like, oh, I didn't have that perspective.
What is the step? Is it like, just out of curiosity, is it like, hi, how you doing? Who do you know here? Tell me the last time that you cried from terror.
No,
like
I would not.
What is the step?
No. There's no step, but very simply is when someone shares something, I would probably say, oh, well, tell me more about that.
Sure. Okay.
And then they choose. You can see depending on their comfort. And sometimes also you just pause. Because when you pause, you're actually giving space for people to dive in, should they want it. And, right now I'm doing a training and coaching, and we're really practicing silence.
Life coaching?
Yeah. And there's beautiful things that are happening when you don't interrupt and when you see if the person decides by themselves if they actually want to go there. Because you can see it when people are finally given the space to have a conversation where they can open up. I mean, it's so beautiful to watch. You're like, oh, this person trusts me, then I can trust them back. And that's what creates the connection. And that's really what Bear is about.
Wow. What are some of the other events then that you've done? You've done Drink with Losers. And at the end, I want to ask you more of those questions that you would ask and that you ask participants to ask each other at the event. Because also that one, it was one that we wanted to go to one time, actually, one of your events. And it like booked up so fast because I think people were like so hungry and so excited for that event. That was really cool. But what else have you done? And you also do series of events.
Yes.
So what are some of those series that you've done?
Yes.
And what are those impacts and what have you seen from that?
There's one that's called Empathy in a Box, and I was doing it with a friend, and it's a game. And so we're sitting at a table, there's cards, and you have prompts. The prompts are just themes. So you pick the themes that you want to talk about, and then you're encouraged to talk about it for how long you want. You're not being interrupted. So usually people would talk about it for maybe 5 minutes, and topics would be family, change, friendship, love, whatever. And then after you're done, people would push some feedback cards, and feedback could be love, could be perspective, questions. And they offer to the person who has just spoken to provide those kind of feedback. And then the person who has just shared decide if they want to have those feedbacks or not. And it's really, for me, it's very powerful because I'm someone who's not comfortable with feedback at all. If I'm telling you something, I don't want to know what you think about it, or like your comments, unless you're asking me and I'm like, yeah, actually, I want your insights.
Are you afraid of just like if there might be feedback, like negative feedback or any kind
I
of
don't like
constructive
being
feedback?
challenged. In
Okay.
general, I don't like I need to be in the right space to be challenged and be like, oh, there's another perspective that is possible. And so empathy in the box gives you the possibility to choose if right now you're comfortable with receiving a different perspective, because maybe you're not. And what is beautiful, and I've said that recently, and the person was making fun of me, my KPI, my goal through all the events that I'm hosting is that I want to have someone crying. Because I see
whether they like it or not. No?
Because when you have strong emotions, it means like something happened. Something switched in you. And it means right now you're connecting to yourself and you feel that this is safe enough to show emotions. And that for me means like, okay, I don't need everybody to cry, but it usually is the reflection that we've reached a certain level of intensity. I'm like, okay, this is what I wanted to do. So empathy in the box is one thing. People love it because they're like, oh, finally, I can talk about something that I really care about and people are listening to me and they feel really good. That's a series. Another series, what we've done together with DNC and Bear is the male dinners. The topic is, how does it feel being a man in today's society?
Tough question.
Yeah.
Tough question.
And the way that it came about is because as a woman here in Beijing, there's so many initiatives about female empowerment. Whether you're looking for mentors, whether you're looking to have advice about your personal finances, or you're looking at learning from the personal experiences of successful women. But there's not so much happening for men. And I had the feeling that it was actually creating antagonizing, like people were antagonizing because men were like, oh yeah, we have enough of those Me Too things and about feminism, and when are we going to be talking about the fact that men are struggling too? Which to me is a very valid question. When are we going to be talking about the fact that men are struggling? And I had watched this a TED Talk from Justin Baldoni that is called Men Enough. When are we going to be men enough? Like, what does it mean? Like looking in a certain way and having certain type of muscles, having a certain ability to financially provide. And I thought it was beautiful. And then he was doing these dinners of successful men, like successful in the sense they're recognized by society as successful. So maybe singers or actors or, celebrities. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about body image and the fact that they were struggling with that. They were talking about the difficulty of displaying emotions, of having genuine friendship with men. I was like, this is what I want to talk about. And it's just something that I wanted to do since 2018. And I really wanted to do it in 2019. But it's hard as a woman to do it. I had a first dinner and my best friend, Thomas, was like, okay, you're not ready because as a woman, you're coming with the perspective of genders. So men in the comparison and women with women and how they're interacting, but you're not focusing solely on how men feel. So I realized I really needed to work better and fine-tune it. And I knew I needed to find a guy who could come in with his perspective. And that was possible when I met Hayden in the very end of February, a few months ago.
Yeah.
And if you guys he was on the podcast.
Yeah.
Episode 9. But that's so cool.
And so because we met and we had so much in common and we were like, okay, can we do things together? And it's sometimes hard to do things by yourself because I'm by myself with Bear. And so meeting Hayden, realized, okay, we want to do a panel because ultimately I'd like to organize this panel of having guys sharing their experiences. And then I met you guys, and I was like, I love your community. Can we do things together? Can we have these dinners together? Can we do the panel together? And now I feel that we're getting into something that is nice and cool.
Yeah, 2 so far.
But we've had 2 dinners.
But we totally sympathize. And, when we first started talking about this, like how difficult it is to get men out things or to get included in things. Even like, you know, the events that we've done, and we've said this on the podcast before, like stuff like the speed dating or like just simple mixers, and it's like, come along and you can, you know, meet some people and talk. Even that can be sometimes difficult.
But you know,
So, and as a guy, I'm like, I don't understand it. I don't understand, like, because as a single guy, I think I would have gone to those events. So I don't understand why they're not going, and I don't know what it is. We've talked about our marketing being too quote unquote feminine sometimes.
I think
like,
women are more, it's like the phrasing sometimes. We've had to learn how to phrase things better.
Fall in love formal was like,
too romantic sounding. But I think a lot of times the women are more inclined anyways to buy tickets for events quicker and to come to dating themed events. So it's been a lot of conversations, but we have had guys in our group say like, what kind of guy stuff is there? Because we've been talking and sharing about women's events, women's organized things. Like I think the Beijing community especially, like we've got so many awesome women's groups, women run things. And I think a lot of the guys were like, well...
Yeah, but like some of those guys are, you know... awkward. And you know, saying that on like International Women's Day, like, hey, what about men too? They're not the type of guys that are going to be going to them events anyway, so it's kind of like just antagonizing people.
But let's touch a little bit on why is it so difficult for men, because it is, I believe, harder more difficult for guys to open up, but it's actually also women are struggling. Like, how equipped are you to talk about how you feel? You know, like talking about emotions, society says that when you talk about your emotions, you're considered weak. And the only emotions that are comfortable talking about is anger. It's basically anger as, you know, this soldier who's going at war, destroying his enemy. So he's strong because he's a killer. But when you're talking about fear, when you see cries, when you see despair, when you see worry, those are all associated to weak emotions. And weakness is associated to women, you know, like, oh, she's missing her soldier who went to war and she's here. And so how do we equip men to talk about how they feel, knowing that it's going to be okay because the most difficult part to open up and have those authentic conversations is that you first need to be aware that this is how you feel. If you're not equipped to talk about your emotions, there's no way that you're going to talk about it. And so I understand that sometimes those men are resentful that there's so much happening, but how much are they provided with a space where it's like, it's okay if right now you're frustrated. If it's okay if right now you say, I don't feel listened. It's okay that you're saying, well, we're talking about harassment and the fact that Me Too and women want to be feeling safe at a bar. But we're not addressing the fact that a lot of guys are saying, well, I don't know how to navigate this world. And when they do...
That is true.
They're being stigmatized. They're like, well, you've had it long enough. Now it's our turn. And like, how dare you saying that it's complicated to approach a woman at the bar? It's not so complicated. Yes, it is. Because whenever there's change, it's not easy. And the fact that we are taking it for granted, that it should be simple, it should be obvious. When you are navigating a new world, change means it's not obvious. And so I really wish for Bear to not only talk about mental health and anxiety, but also what I was saying earlier, talking about what you're passionate about, but also talking about difficult conversations, things that maybe society considers taboo, things that maybe you're afraid that you're going to be judged because right now in this woke culture and feminist culture, we tend to still antagonize each other. Like we don't know how to listen. Like you're sharing about how you feel, and I'm like, but why are you feeling that way? You shouldn't feel that way. Because it should be easy to approach a woman at the bar, and it is simple right now to have sex with people, and if this person is drunk, and like how do you ask consent, and how do you ask, can I do this? Do I need to ask for permission? Oh, but that removes the fun of it. Oh, now I need to ask her if I want to kiss her, but like the girl is also saying that you shouldn't ask because it's not sexy. How do I do this?
Oh my gosh, yes.
It is complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it really is complex. And I think it was so cool when you reached out about doing these events for men, and after I watched and started listening to Man Enough, which I highly recommend, that podcast that he does is so good. But also hearing like guys at the tables here in Beijing talking about their things and what's personal to them. And you're a really fantastic moderator as well. I think you're giving that space for them to talk.
I mean, I'm giving them the space, so I'm being very strict. What you were saying earlier, right? No opinion, only experience. Because
it's hard to differentiate because your opinions are shaped on your experiences. So sometimes you don't preface your opinion with, I think this because when I was 25, this happened, so that's been difficult.
And I remember once I was meeting this guy, right? Date night in China. So I'm going to be talking about that date. So we had matched on dating app years ago, and when I went back to dating app, he came to me and I thought that maybe he could be an interesting speaker because we were sharing so polar opposite opinions and ideas. And so I was like, okay, I know that we have opposite opinions. I want to know what his personal experience was. And so we sat down, and first he was, mansplaining me about the history of Eastern Europe countries. And I was like, you're really assuming that I know nothing about history. But okay, sure, fine. I know the kind of person that you are, but still, it's quite interesting. And then I was really going deep into, we have, would you be okay talking about your perspective on men and how does it feel? And he had such strong opinions. For instance, I was telling the story of Thomas, so this really, really good friend of mine, who had mentioned that he thought it was complicated dating here in China, because even though he was describing himself as a feminist, he could see that the girls he was going on dates were still having the expectation that he would pay for the date, right? So talking about this, the fact this contradiction. This
has been a conversation in date night China groups so many times, actually.
Yes.
Like each group has probably come around to this conversation of, well, who pays? Like, should a man pay? What do you expect? What's etiquette now? Like, who does
Because
what?
the paradigm has changed. It's like, how do I navigate that? And you're saying that you're feminist, but you still expect me to provide. So is that feminist? And so Thomas was like, well, it's not easy. And now I feel pressured to financially provide. And so I was sharing this story to this guy on a date. And this guy just said, well, your friend is an idiot. I was like, I am not asking for your opinion, actually. I was just asking for your personal experience. Do you feel that there's a pressure for you to provide? And it took us maybe half an hour, during which he went to the bathroom for a break, and I was texting him. I was like, oh my God, this is going so bad and I'm hating this. I was like, why is it so hard for this person to talk to me about their experience and not their opinion about my friend? And I even had to say, my friend is not here, and I don't feel comfortable with you using adjectives to describe him when I'm actually asking about you. But back to what you were saying, right? It was complicated for him to talk about his first-hand experience. And at the end of the day, his conclusion was like, I never struggled as a man. I never had any challenge. I cannot talk about any experience, but this is what I think. Okay. Well, I guess we're done, and I'm gonna go now.
Did you see him again after that?
No. Well, my intention was very clear. I was interested in knowing if you could be a speaker, and the condition to be a speaker for the panel is, can you talk about your experiences and not just your opinions? So yeah, like there was nothing that we could share in common. He was not a suitable speaker. We were done.
So did you feel, reflecting on that, do you feel like you said earlier about men, they might not necessarily be equipped with the language skills and the articulation and the sort of like the model of thinking to actually then say, actually, how do I feel based on my experiences and why do I think and feel this? Because I think some guys just don't. It's not common. It certainly doesn't come naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, when we were having this, the first dinner, and I'm not going to mention names here, but there was this one person I really thought he would be a perfect speaker.
Thank you. That's very nice of you to say. That's very nice of you to say. Wow, that's really kind.
And we sat down and we had texted and we had this long conversations about him. And what he was saying is like, well, I've never thought about this. I never asked myself those questions. And I think it's not so common to deeply self-reflect about how am I feeling right now in today's society as a person, as a man, as a father, as a partner. Society does not really encourage us for self-reflection. So social media is telling us to just like throw our shit out there and just like pour it. But that is not really self-reflection. It's more like, I have a voice and I want to feel heard. Guys, listen to me. That's very different. Like, how am I feeling? Am I okay? What are the opportunities for me to change? Do I want to change? Is there growth here, and do I want to go towards growth? It's not simple. It's not natural to do that.
Because it does move fast. Actually, the thing that sort of helped us, and Rachel got me onto this from another friend, but we did the year compass. Who told us about that? Was that
Me?
It might have been. Well, it sounds like something she would actually do as well. I think maybe Lisa actually did, but I think Lisa maybe knew Mira. I don't know. There's several people who actually recommended it to us.
But we did that, and if you don't know what the year compass is, you can find it online. And it makes you reflect on the year and different aspects of year, from life, love, career, satisfaction, health, well-being, and you think about the last 12 months, and then you have to think about and project for the next 12 months.
And it's so detailed, and it takes
so
a
detailed.
long time.
It took me a couple of days.
We had to like break it down because it's so much that you're having to think about, and stuff that you didn't really ask and look at certain aspects of your life.
And it was strange at the end, like when I've looked at it, or when I kept looking at different boxes, and certain things kept coming up, different phrases or different aspects of my year, and I'm like, oh wow, these 3 things are very important to me, obviously, because I've written it down so much. And my point is that level of reflection, I did that once in 12 months, and that just seems insane. Like, why are you waiting 12 months to think about it? And I think I did it last week a little bit. And we're 6 months in, So, yeah, we don't do it enough. You're completely right.
And that's what's happening a little bit with Bear and the questions, is that there are a little bit of prompts for you to reflect a little bit. And I think that's the reason why people feel so safe and feel that, and that's the reason why they keep coming back. It's like, oh, I hadn't thought about it. Like, so they're learning about each other, most likely because they're also learning about themselves, right? If you ask me a question that I hadn't thought about before, and so I'm thinking about it, like, oh yeah, that's a good question. Like, okay, what is something that gave me joy this week, and how connected am I feeling to my true self and my values? Okay. And then I'm sharing this with you, and then it's also an invitation for you to share about how you feel. And earlier you were asking me the types of questions for Drink with Losers. Sometimes it's like serious questions, like how do you define friendship? Sometimes it's more like stupid questions, like what would be a stupid question? Stupid questions, for instance. Oh, those are more stuff that I use for my parties and birthdays. But like, do you pee in the shower? And it'll be like, oh, that's funny, and it's superficial. It doesn't go anywhere. But then usually, if I say, yeah, I pee in the shower, it's like, oh, this is so gross. And then you ask the question, well, why is it gross? And what is gross for you? And then when you go into this, like, what is gross for you? You were asking me, like, what are the steps?
Yeah.
Then you enter a completely new world, but it just has been prompted by this very stupid question.
Okay, so since starting Bear, how have these questions, these events affected you? Because, like, I know anytime we do events, it's socially exciting and then a bit draining anyways, but sometimes our events aren't getting... Sometimes we have deep things, but other times if it's a mixer or speed dating, we still walk away feeling like, okay, great, we've had some good times. But, like, when you're also doing intense or emotionally deep, like, searching and all of that, and you're feeling so excited these people are, like, getting intense and breaking through, but how is it also affecting you? Like after you do these events, do you kind of need time away to recharge, or does it also cause this self-reflection for you? Does it impact how like your relationships with other people? Like how is doing Bear affect you?
But Bear has changed my life. The reason why it changed my life is because now it's tied to my identity. So I'm using Bear as an excuse to say, well, this is the kind of person that I am. Does it drain me? It doesn't, because what recharges me is the connection when we are talking about who we really are. What drains me is small talk. Because when you're talking and we're small talking, then I'm like, I'm listening, but at the same time I'm thinking, what do I say next? Like how do I navigate this conversation? I don't know. Like I generally don't. Like right now, there's a farewell parties. I miss all of them, and it's terrible because I want to say goodbye to people that I care about, but I'm so scared because I don't know how to talk to people, and that is very draining for me. But a moment where there's deep connection, I feel really good. And sometimes I'm not participating. So usually Drink with Losers, I don't enter conversations because I'm circulating and making sure that everybody's okay, that nobody's alone, and that people are actually talking deep, and I have to think logistics. So that is a little bit draining for me because I need to think about several things at once. So that would be the draining effect. And so how do I recharge? I would go home, and then the next day is fine. What would be more draining for me is, I have quite an intense social life. So right now, I'm forcing myself to rest. The eye infection really helped because the doctor was like, you need to sleep. Your immune system is too low. And I'm like, I've told people I'm only going to meet one person per day during weekdays and 3 people per day on weekends. And people are like, that's
a lot.
And for me, I'm like,
wow.
And I'm screwing it up already this week. I'm meeting multiple people per day during weekdays.
Well, there's 2 of us. We're here.
But I'm meeting someone else
later,
after.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's a lot. I feel like, but maybe for you, is it like, it's okay because you're having really deep, great conversations with these people one-on-one rather than I'm going to a party and not really talking to anybody.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
I know, it's exhausting hearing about it. I'm tired just hearing about it, definitely.
But for me, I really enjoy those moments of connections because it's like, oh, we're close now. Like I feel closed, and then I don't have to feel lonely. But when I'm reaching, like basically when I'm running from one thing to another, then I'm like, okay, I need some time by myself. But one person a day is a very good pace.
You know, if you want some tips on small talk, you know, the British are amazing at small talk.
They're very
Just talk
good.
about the weather.
I know, but that fascinates me. I really don't know how to do it.
Yeah, just talk about anything about the weather. Comment on the color, the temperature, the humidity.
But I check
what
out.
It was yesterday, what it would be tomorrow, what you think it might be tomorrow, what you thought was going to happen yesterday but didn't. You know, it's the possibilities are endless.
And this to me drains me. Like I'm already so scared. I'm listening like, oh
She's
my
already like
God.
falling asleep.
How
like,
do
oh
I?
my God.
No, but like, how
Just
do I do it?
All you do is just like look up and just go, looks like rain. Or I thought it was going to rain. It's not. Just anything with a, rain, sun, any time of year, it's perfect.
Yeah, well,
That's
I
the weather
find
with
that very
Nathan.
difficult. Yeah, I'm cringing.
Oh
Right
my
now.
God,
Like,
is this a new business idea? Like we create a DNC small talk app where we just every maybe 2 minutes you get a text message if you know that you're going to a party and you're going to be doing small talk for 20 minutes. You can set a timer. You get a little buzz on your phone and you just read it and you say, the Star Wars prequels were better than the originals. What do you think? And then let the people talk or I thought it was going to rain earlier, but it didn't.
But to your point of dating, right? Date night China. I find that a lot of people, when you're going on a date, you really want to go and connect. But sometimes you don't really know what to talk about. And how do you feel connected to this person? How do you get to know this person? And so if you're talking about the weather for like an hour, then you leave the date, maybe you have a good time because this person is good looking and up to your taste. But there's a risk that you leave the date and you actually don't know much about this person. And I find that, yes, it would be so helpful to have those prompts about topics that you care about, or prompts about questions. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with this 36 questions to fall in love.
Yes.
Oh, we've been meaning to. We're working on doing that.
With our new videos,
Cool.
we really want to set people up to do that because the questions are so good.
Yes.
Yeah, what we'd like to do is just like invite people to come along and actually film it happening.
Yeah, there's like a whole series on YouTube,
It's
and you
so
see people
good.
falling in love. It's like, oh, wonderful.
Yeah, it looks so good.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Have we done it? We've not even done it.
I think
have
we've
we?
asked each
We're
other some
already
of
in
them.
love, so we don't need to.
Still.
We've asked each other some of the questions though, or even the Gottman cards. Like I think I
Yes.
pulled out Gottman cards. Like I don't think you even realized what I was doing, but I was like, look at this app that I've got questions.
Oh yeah.
But I love things like that though, because I do think it like is, if you're not really sure, but you're like, I'm looking to connect, where do I go? There's so many like great resources for that kind of deeper connection and those kind of questions.
Because sometimes what's also fascinating is the question of what is holding you back from asking questions. And there's some people, they don't know what to ask, but there's some people, they want to ask, but they don't dare. They don't dare because like, oh, it's going to be too intrusive. Like I don't feel comfortable asking that question because maybe it's going to be too much, or like there's like this sort of shyness, and I find that fascinating because what happens, you ask the question, worst case scenario, they're like, they avoid, right, they don't answer, or they say I'd rather, it's a bit too personal, I'm not feeling comfortable, and that's it, right? And it means that they're setting boundaries and that they're taking care of themselves, and they're like, well, right now it doesn't feel safe enough yet for me to open up so much. But at least it shows this intention, this curiosity. I'm interested in you. I'm curious about who you are. And I think that in dates, some people say, well, you're very intense. Well, that I really would like to get to know you because I'm interested in you. And yes, we can talk about the weather, but how is talking about the weather going to make me want to go to bed with you?
Yeah.
So it works surprisingly well, actually. I'm kidding. It's just innate. It's British. I can't not talk about the weather.
No, I did have somebody tell me, they were like, the definition of a good date should be that you walked away and you learned something new about that person. And I think that's a great, like, even starting small, like, I'm just here to learn about this person and I need to learn something new. And even going on a second date from the first date, like, what new thing am I going to learn about this person? And it's not going to just be stale. Like, how can I be curious about them to learn about them? Yeah.
So what advice would you give to somebody that might be going on a date and wanting to eliminate small talk? I mean, I think you've already given some great advice already about the questions that might lead into like, even like the silly ones, like the do you pee in the shower, and then let's see where that goes. I think it just opens up. But is there anything that you feel like you've not covered in how to really get rid of small talk?
I think what really, really is important is setting intention. Like if dating app or by meeting someone and you're like, well, I'm not someone who really likes small talk and I really like personal, intimate conversations. Is that something that you're comfortable with? Already this, like, it's basically asking consent. Like, are we aligned? Are we on the same vibe just now? Because the person could be like, I don't really like going too personal too soon, which is perfectly fine. And then if that's actually something that you don't like, then you know you probably don't want to go on a date with this person. But if they say, yes, I like personal, intimate conversations, then you're like, okay, then this is, let's go. Let's ask each other questions.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us this week, Helena. It's been really cool to hear more about Bear and like also how it's personally affected you and shifted your view and what you do and how you interact with people here in Beijing. So thank you for joining us this week.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
you.
we'll let everybody know in the description how you can follow Bear or join their WeChat group, because you have a WeChat group and you'll be having some upcoming events in Beijing.
Yes.
And you also have a WeChat account.
Yes.
If you're not in Beijing and you're just curious what's going on as well, you can check that out and we'll link that in the description.
Thanks a lot. And
Thank
we'll
you.
talk to you again next week.
Bye.
Bye.